Welcome to this episode of From the Plant Floor Up. This is Chris Gibbs, your guest host, and a little change of pace today. I am, as I previously mentioned, your guest host, and Jeff Smith, who is the host of this podcast, is the guest.
Reason for that is we're going to have Jeff talk about a tool, a product from DYNICS that his team has been working on and is coming out with the latest revision. And Jeff is going to give us the, who, what, when, where, why, how of ICS360.Fusion. So, Jeff, welcome to your own podcast.
It's great to be a guest on this podcast because it is one of my favorite podcasts.
Well, make yourself at home, feel comfortable, put your feet up on whatever you want. It's, of course, your podcast, so you can do it as you wish. So we're here today to talk about ICS360.Fusion. Why don't we start with, why did you have your team build this? What were the challenges you were trying to solve?
That's a great question. As some folks know, some folks don't. I was an end user for 25 years of my life. I came over to DYNICS in 2017. Prior to that, I was largely an end user. Actually, for 2 years in between leaving the end user and DYNICS, I was a VP of product and strategy for a similar product. And then I came to DYNICS. Over the course of my career, my role as a managing plant floor data collection and networks and controls and clickety-clack. We always had to try to get data off the manufacturing floor into the enterprise, from the enterprise back to the manufacturing floor. And, we created some tools to do that internally at the company. But we never really had exactly what we wanted. We couldn't buy exactly what we wanted because nobody had it. I tried to work with some of the other big vendors that we had at the time, and I never got what I wanted, so to speak. So Fusion is what I want. That's kind of the long and the short of it. If I look at what we've done with Fusion and what we're doing with Fusion, it's to take all of the best things that I've used over the years, the functions, the features, the ideas, and a bunch of things that I couldn't get from anybody that I wanted, and turn them into a product, right? And coincidentally, the need to get data from the plant floor and an IoT or move data to the cloud, all of that is even more prevalent and necessary than it was. So, while Fusion would have fit the bill for me 25 years ago, it more than fits the bill for me and a lot of DYNICS customers today.
Gotcha. That seems to be a common theme here. You didn't have what you needed, so you went out and built it yourself. I've heard that messaging before. So let's talk about Fusion. Talk about, let's first start with the plant floor. We can go to the edge cases later in the conversation, but who can this help? What kind of data can we pull, and how can Fusion help make it useful?
So Fusion connects to, lots of different plant floor devices, PLCs, Rockwell and Siemens, Modbus TCP stuff, Ethernet IP. So all of the things you would normally think of. It also talks to, things with REST APIs or MQTT, which is a popular buzzword today. So it does all that. So if you work in the area of what can we talk to, it's pretty much anything. And along those lines, one of, when I said I wanted to build what I wanted, over the years, I've had to talk to, new and unique pieces of equipment. And oftentimes the company's product that we were using didn't talk to that. So I would go back to them and say, hey, I need a driver that does this because I'm going to have 200 of these things in the next year. And the problem was that sometimes they would say yes, and for $200,000 or $100,000 a year and 6 months later, I'd get what I wanted, or most of what I wanted, or at least the first pass of what I wanted. And so I wanted a product that adding connectivity to it was one of its core functionalities, the ease of adding functionality to it. So when a customer comes to me and says, hey, we need to talk to this, it needs to be a plug-in. It needs to be fast. We need to do, as long as we can get the protocol and understand what it is, I want to be able to talk to it, quick, fast, and in a hurry. One of our big customers, when we added MQTT, 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half, they came and said, hey, how we need to talk to AWS. How can we do that with MQTT? And if Fusion didn't have MQTT support at the time, we added it in 3 days. So to say it would be an understatement to say nobody else could have probably done that. It would not be a stretch. When we added Modbus TCP, for example, I think it took 2 weeks. And largely a week and a couple of days of that was us arguing internally over how the UI should look. The actual implementation wasn't difficult, didn't take us long. And we've designed the product for that reason. So that's kind of one thing. The other thing that's important is scalability. There are times that I wanted to put my point of collection. I'm a big fan of a distributed architecture. I like my points of collection out at the plant floor, which is why if you hold your breath, it won't be very long, and you'll be able to see ICS360.Fusion running on an ICS360 Defender, so that your one point of ingress and egress to the plant floor will be both your secure firewall perimeter appliance and your point of secure data collection in and out of the plant floor. But that's just a carrot I'm dangling. So I needed something that, would be easily extensible to other types of communications and things. Second thing I was looking for was scalability. In a distributed architecture, having Fusion out at the edge goes a long way towards doing that. So I needed Fusion to run in a very small area, small space. The Fusion can run in Windows, it can run in Linux, it can run on, virtual machines, DYNICS. We have edge appliances that run Fusion, and I needed it to fit in really small spaces. So for example, we can containerize it. It runs in containers of what, like a Docker, for example. I have one customer who's running it in a 5G modem. So as you can imagine, that's an extremely small footprint. I have other customers who want to run it in a server room and be able to reach down to the plant floor and pull data. So the Fusion had to be the product that could do all of that. And to do that, we adopted a technology from Microsoft called Orleans. And Orleans is a technology that was designed to facilitate distributed communications with tens of thousands of internet nodes. That's really what it was developed for by Microsoft, and that's what they use it for. It's really designed to facilitate nearly real-time communications on a massive distributed internet system. Well, we put that in Fusion. So Fusion has the ability to talk at the server level, at the cloud level, at the plant floor level, anywhere in between. I've got one customer that uses a server-based instance of Fusion for certain things, and then he has them in appliances out at every assembly system, right? So that's one example. The other thing that Orleans brings to the table is another big piece that I was interested in, and that I felt was necessary, and that I simply couldn't get with any of the other tools that I used, was redundancy and reliability. So one of the features that Orleans brings to the table is the clustering technology. So yeah, you can run it in a really small footprint in a container, in Windows on a small appliance, and Linux on a small appliance, or you can run it in a server room. But any one of those instances can use this and participate in this clustering technology idea, which means I can have 2 VMs up in the server room running Fusion, and they work together to service all of the same systems on the plant floor to connect and pull data. And so they load share between them, which means that you don't need as many resources in each instance. But more importantly, if one of them goes down for any reason, or one of them has no connectivity to the plant floor for some reason, maybe IT kills the BDF, or something goes south, the other one will take over seamlessly. You will never see a bump or a hiccup. You'll never see a change in your ability to collect data. And if you find that even 2 instances or 1 instance is, that your implementation of Fusion is growing, or you're just collecting more and more and more data, you spin up another instance into the cluster, and it just seamlessly starts working with the others 2. And now you've spread the load over 3 systems. I've got a customer who's doing that. He's actually going to run a cluster between 3 small appliances out at the plant floor at his assembly lines. So he's using our SDN network to securely connect his assembly systems, and the only thing that can get between them is Fusion. But then each instance of Fusion on this distributed network on the plant floor will help carry the load for all of the data collection. And if for any reason any one of them gets disconnected, the others continue to pick up the load. So its redundancy and its robustness is really second to none. There isn't a product that I'm aware of that's capable of doing what we're doing, and largely in part because of how we've implemented this Orleans technology.
Gotcha. And the use cases you've been referencing are plant floor use cases, but you also mentioned the 5G modem, which also implies that the edge, critical infrastructure pipelines, sensors, whatnot, are also a potential use case in deployment for Fusion, correct?
We've got customers who use Fusion in a municipality environment. So, for example, they're collecting data over these 5G modems back to a central location, in a city of, or a township of, or county of. I've got a number of wastewater, several waste. I shouldn't say a number. I don't know what number means, but we've got a number of wastewater customers that are water management or waste management, and they use it for all of these potential remote sites. And that kind of brings me to another feature of Fusion that's designed for every environment, but really shines in this environment, and that's store and forward. And so anybody listening to this podcast is going to go, that's nothing. Everybody's got store and forward. It's no big deal. If the database or thing I'm trying to talk to is down, we can queue up transactions and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's true. Most of the time that's limited to databases, whereas Fusion, we have the ability in Fusion to expose it to any kind of resource that we might want to talk to. Probably databases will be the most common. But the big difference in the way we designed it on the Fusion product is, again, going back to things I learned over the years. Most people think of store and forward as a discrete function. So either it's on or it's off. And if it's on, it's queuing up transactions, or could queue up transactions if connectivity is cut off completely. Again, very discrete. I'm either talking to this database or I'm not. And if I'm not, store and forward becomes active. We look at it a little differently because it's connectivity and collection of data is not discrete. What I mean by that is, if I have a customer using 900 megahertz radios to move data, radios aren't the most robust way to move data. So sometimes the connection's fine. Sometimes it's a little flaky. Sometimes it's slow, right? You get a big thunderstorm in the area. That doesn't mean that the guys doing wastewater and water management don't have to collect data, can't still monitor this stuff. In fact, I would argue it's probably more important at that point when you're in the middle of a downpour. Or if I look at server rooms or anywhere somebody might choose to run Fusion in past years, in my experience, if you're running something like this in a server room and IT changes the resource allocations to certain VMs or adds more VMs, what's going to happen is you're going to see, instead of a straight flat line of communications throughput, it's going to be up and it's going to be down. It's going to look more like a curve, like a sine wave, than it is a straight line. And with Fusion, the way store and forward works is if you choose to enable store and forward, it's always working, which means I read something from a PLC, it gets into the store and forward queue. If there's no reason I can't immediately send it out, it immediately goes out. So is it delayed by 3 or 4 microseconds? Yeah, probably. But as long as your comms are good, your servers are responding properly, the database is responding properly, it looks like a pretty straight flat line. Because even if the server slows down and we start queuing up 1, 2, 3 transactions and then pumping them out as fast as we're comfortable with that device connectivity, you take the hills and the valleys out of your throughput and out of your ability to talk to these devices. So in my mind, you turn on, store and forward, you just leave it on, right? And then Fusion does the work of taking the variability out of your ability to store data.
Gotcha. Now we're gonna have to cut this, Jen. My brain just kind of went off on me there. So, was it a customer request for store and forward, or was that something that you knew? Hey, we were always going to have this in the product. And then on the flip to that also is, why are we talking about Fusion today? Why now? Why is it of interest in getting the attention from DYNICS that it is today?
There's a huge need for it. There's a lot of complex solutions out there. There's a lot of tools that collect and move data, but they require, either if you want to do anything truly amazing with them, they require coding and scripting, and that's just not really generally in the wheelhouse of plant floor folks. They have so much to do. I always tell people, taking a training class as controls engineer is great, but I'm probably not going to touch that robot again for 9 months. So how likely will it be that I'm going to remember what I learned 9 months ago? I haven't touched that robot in 9 months, 10 months, a year, what have you. So there's a real need for a tool that's easy to use. And, I used to laugh, and I still laugh because I hear myself saying this. And as an end user, if somebody told me what I'm about to say, I would have said, you're blowing smoke up my posterior, because, everybody talks a good story, but that there's no way that I've never seen a product where that kind of thing works. In Fusion, it actually does. And I'm always willing to put my money where my mouth is, which is why you can go to our website and download a fully functional version of Fusion. You can go to docs.dynics.com and you have the full manual online. And that full version of Fusion will do everything you want to do. And the only thing it does is it stops solving what we call flows every 2 hours, and you just restart it and continue developing or playing. That keeps the trial from going into a production environment inadvertently. So we've got this flow engine in Fusion, which is a graphical engine, and it gives you the ability to develop and put building blocks together that do what you want. And one of them that people use and are starting to use a lot as they push data to the cloud is JSON, right? It's just a way to organize and store and format data by a standard. And I've had several customers, including one of our upcoming customers who's a large power company. I was kind of talking through Fusion and showing it to him, and the guy almost fell out of his chair. And his comment was, how much custom code we've written and how much code we support that I have to support to make this, just to tear apart a JSON message from something or to send a JSON message. It's just a tremendous amount of effort when, writing JSON enabled code isn't what our core business is. That's not what we're here to do. And so I show him a tool where you just paste some JSON into it, and it basically builds the schema for you. And you just then pick and choose what pieces of data you want and then toss them in a PLC. And it really is that easy. And that's kind of the other goal of Fusion, is to be able to do that. And the why of it is because more and more is the need to move data, not less and less. And unfortunately, everybody else seems to be doing it the way everybody else is doing it. And I would largely say it's because most of the guys who started developing some of these tools didn't have 20 some years on the plant floor trying to do this kind of thing. I mean, I started launching Ethernet-based control systems in 2006. That's before anybody on the plant floor even could spell Ethernet, right? IP address was something they get it from IT on their computer. So I've been doing this a long time, and I've learned a lot about what I like and what I don't like and what works well on the plant floor. And I'm all about the easy button. It has to work. It has to be bulletproof, but it should be as easy to support and manage on the plant floor as possible. And that's the genesis for Fusion as it is today. And, we've got customers who have site licenses for it. We've got customers, I've got machine builders who will buy a single license and just ship it with the machine to move data between, a PLC and an application they wrote in Visual Studio, for example. You can do all of that with Fusion. It talks to so many different things. And the goal was to come up with a product that had widespread appeal, which we have, gets a lot of excitement. It does. I have yet to show it to a customer and they didn't go, I need that. And, from a DYNICS perspective, it's one of our top 2 products from a focus perspective. The only other product line that I have as many people dedicated to is the ICS360 Defender/DCC product line. We've got other software products and they're great products, but none of them have the focus these 2 do, because they're so needed and so prevalent right now that, the business drives the growth and the product drives the business. So.
And it's not a new product. We've had it out for, and it's a stable its proven value in the field tool that we got a new release coming, right? But this tool is tested in the field.
It's been in production, critical production for year and a half when we did our first release of it. So it's been out for year-ish. Number of customers, lots of use cases. And then I guess the other piece I didn't mention was there's built-in dashboarding and visualization. So you can put up dashboards, run presentations, and Fusion will do all that for you. And actually, one of the interesting use cases for Fusion that I had never considered, but I find out some of our customers are actually using it for. A lot of times they'll have a corporate FIS system or a corporate information system, and their job is to put some logic in a PLC that pushes data off to this system. They really can't see what the data looks like in transit. So with Fusion, they can. Because you remove the data with Fusion, you drop a dashboard in place, you just point a data table, for example, at one of the objects in Fusion, and it just shows you the data that's moving. And you can literally watch it, which is kind of cool. One of the other big challenges with a product like this that I've run into over the years is, oftentimes you don't know as it moves through the process what the data looks like. Or let's say you're developing a flow and it has different operators in it to do different things. And as far as I know, when no one else has done this, they'll either give you a log that you can look through and see what's what. But generally what happens is, and I had a customer actually tell me this 2 days ago when we were talking about a competing product. And I said, well, with Fusion, you just put it in debug mode and you click breakpoints and it'll stop there and it'll show you all the data that it's affecting or what the data it looks like at that point in the whole process. So you can literally, instead of having to stop it at the end and try to work your way backwards and figure it all out, you can stop it right in the middle and it'll show you the data. And I said, how do you do that today? He said, well, currently we have to basically remove everything back to the point we think the data is going south and then put it all back in place later. Whereas with Fusion, you just jump into debug mode and you can step through it, or you can, graphically or visually step through it, or you can set breakpoints and just jump to various breakpoints as it executes and look at what the data looks like.
So you created an efficient tool to manage data efficiently, is what it sounds like. Sounds like this is a pure efficiency machine.
It's very efficient. It's very graphical. It's very easy to use. And, there's always the case where some customers are going to come up with some goofy things they want to connect to. It's just the nature of it. And a lot of times it's older stuff. So we've also got a operator in Fusion that you can drop in a flow that lets you write custom C# if you want to. Very infrequently do people do it. But a great example is, had a customer, I don't know, I keep saying a couple of weeks ago, it's probably been 3 months ago now. They have an old CMM machine that writes a text file with results. And one of the things it writes out is a date timestamp. And the date timestamp was the most undate timestamp looking thing you've ever seen. It literally, this byte means that, this byte, it was ridiculous. And so nothing anybody ever created anywhere would be able to interpret that as a timestamp and effectively put that in a database. So in Fusion, one of my guys just dropped about 20 lines of C# code in there once they told us what it actually meant. And now when they pull that data from the CMM, it reads it from a text file, pull the data from a CMM, it actually translates that into a real date time, which they write off to a database. And they also at the same time write it off to an Excel file, which gets emailed off to the production manager.
Rather than have to go back to the machine to redo the code on the date timestamp, we just transform the data in flight to make it more useful to the databases where they're sending it. So Fusion has the ability to transform the data as well.
Yeah, Fusion moves data 2 ways. It's just data in motion, so it just moves it, or it's data in motion with the ability to manipulate and change the data, modify data, aggregate data. You could pull data from 10 PLCs together very easily and send it off to a single database. It's just got a lot of ability. Its purpose in life is data. I mean, as much as I like the visualization side of it, it's clear that Fusion is designed to efficiently move data, and it does.
And the audience for this tool is anyone who has data, right? Which is a large target, if you will.
I mean, if you have data, the need to get data or the need to push data, Fusion is the tool that does it, and it does it. It's people talk about bi-directional data. Like, I'm going to take data from the plant floor and move it to the enterprise. I'm going to take data from the enterprise, move it to the plant floor. Well, that's all well and good. That's not bi-directional data flows. Fusion does omnidirectional data flows. So I can send data to a dashboard, send it to an Excel file, send it to a text file, send it to a database, send it to the cloud. I can do any of that or get it from 10 different things simultaneously. And again, some of that goes back to the architecture and the way Orleans work, but it really allows us to be omnidirectional in terms of data. So if I get a fault on something on the floor and it's based on, some event that occurred and it's starting to occur more frequently, Fusion could send that off to a database, send an alert, text, whatever, an email. And at the same time, it could generate a ticket in Maximo. So it reaches over to a Maximo system, which is a ticketing system for trades on the plant floor. And it could enter a ticket into Maximo that scheduled some preventive maintenance or somebody to come look at that thing that's going on. So it's a very powerful tool and easily handles multiple tasks at the same time.
Early on, I planned on asking you about the use cases, but obviously we've been talking about those all the way through. And there are many, and users are coming up with their own that we haven't even foreseen. You brought that up a number of times.
Yeah, there's actually a funny story about that. That kind of goes along with that thought. Is that what I tell customers is this: when we're working with Fusion and they get excited and they see, oh, that'll really help me solve this problem. I bet them a steak dinner that within 6 months, they will come up with 3 to 5 more things they're doing with Fusion or want to do with Fusion or are going to do with Fusion than what they originally acquired Fusion for. I have yet to pay out a steak dinner.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine you've been treated to a number of steak dinners as well. So that is good. And you said it earlier. Let's say it again. How if I'm listening to this, or if I've got somebody I know that has a project, how do they get a hold of Fusion? What do they do with it? How do they get to test it?
So go out to DYNICS.com, look under products, find Fusion. At the top of that page is a download link. And when you download that, you get a fully functional version of Fusion. We're not going to ask you 20 questions. We're not going to ask for your firstborn, your company name. When should we call you to sell it to you? You get to download it. You get to play with it. And then if it does what you want, reach out. We can help. And we also have docs.dynics.com, which is the entire Fusion manual online. So you can access it for information about anything in Fusion at any time. You don't need to log into it. You don't need an account. I'm not going to make you give me your email to look at that documentation. Fusion sells itself. I don't need to do that stuff to get you interested, because once you play with it, as a general rule, you'll be interested. That's been the trend.
Yeah, that's the trend. That we have data points ourselves that prove the value of the tool, because we've seen it in operational usage, making people's plants more efficient, making their data more available. So you're confident in that, obviously.
I'm a little cocky. Like I always say, I put my products where my mouth is.
Well, that is.
You don't have to believe me. I'll prove it to you.
We'll prove it to you. We'll show you. All right. Well, from my end, I think we've thoroughly discussed Fusion. I think the value of it is there, and now we're just waiting for the audience to show us additional use cases, show us new uses for the tool, and we're here to help. And so with that, I think, Jeff, unless you have anything else you want to say about Fusion, let me know.
I could talk about Fusion for the next couple of hours, so probably we should let it go at that. But, I'm always happy to answer questions. And my email is jsmith@dynics.com. So JSMITH@DYNICS.com. Feel free to send me an email, or you can go out to our website and there's a get more information button, which you click it. That will probably make its way to me or one of my team.
Well, thank you for that, Jeff. Thank you for talking about this valuable, useful tool that can enable our customer base to make their plants, make their edge, make their data more efficient and valuable and operationally improved. And with that, that ends our podcast for today from the plant floor up. We'll see you guys in the next episode.